Two headlines came out of China's EV world in the last few months. And if you only saw one of them, you'd draw the opposite conclusion about NIO. Headline number one, BYD just revealed a battery that charges from 10% to 97% in 9 minutes. And Chinese media is framing it as a direct shot against NIO's entire battery swap business. Headline number two, CATL, the largest battery maker on earth, just signed a 5-year deal to go deeper into NIO's swap network and put real money behind it. Here's the thing, neither of those headlines is being sold straight. The 9-minute charge is real, but the threat to NIO framing runs into battery chemistry, real-world charging behavior, and the power grid. Those are 3 walls it has not cleared yet. And the CATL story isn't a rival showing up, it's the opposite. Today, we're sorting out what's actually true and what it means for the stock. Let's go. Okay, let's ground this before we go anywhere else because a lot has moved in the last 3 weeks. Okay, so far, Goldman Sachs upgraded NIO from hold to buy on July 13th, setting a $7 price target. That's about 46% above where the stock was trading that morning. Here's a quick note. NIO's ADR trades in USD on the New York Stock Exchange, not renminbi directly. So these RMB figures are currency converted for reference, not an actual quoted price. Next, Goldman isn't alone. HSBC upgraded NIO to buy back in March with a $6.80 price target, and pretty much the broader analyst consensus is bullish. 24 analysts polled by S&P Global put NIO at a buy rating with an average 12-month target of $7.35. That's roughly 51% above the current price. Also, the stock then had a rough stretch, as everybody saw. It had 7 straight losing sessions into July 24th. That was down over 11% on the year at that point. It's since recovered, closing at $4.88 on July 31st. That's up 0.83% on the day. And that was helped in part by a paper profit on NIO's stake in CXMT, a Chinese memory chip maker. Now that's a detail most retail coverage isn't even mentioning. On the operating side, Q2 deliveries came in at 107,658 vehicles. That was up 49.4% year over year, but that actually missed NIO's own guidance floor by about 2,300 units. June alone was 40,597 deliveries, up 62.9%. And finally, the new ES8, NIO's 5-seat flagship, started deliveries on July 10th, priced from roughly $56,700 or $40,700 if you take it under battery as a service. So let's recap. You got an analyst upgrade, a chip stake windfall, strong but not perfect delivery growth, and the new flagship in the market. That's the backdrop. Now let's get into the swap story because this is where the stock conversation and the tech conversation actually merge. Okay. Let's pressure test that 9-minute number, okay? I want to put it to the test. BYD CEO Wang Shanfu, hope that's how you pronounce his name, guys. Mandarin's not my first language, go figure. So BYD CEO, he unveiled a 2nd-generation Blade battery paired with a flash charging system, okay? 10 to 70% in 5 minutes, or 10 to 97% in 9. Chinese outlet 36KR called it a shot aimed straight at NIO. In fact, in their own words, at NIO's throat. Okay, that's what they said, not me. That's the headline. Here's what it runs into in practice. Wall number 1, fast charging is genuinely hard on the battery. Now this isn't a talking point, it's electrochemistry. Studies on high C-rate charging show it drives lithium plating and SEI growth on the anode, the two dominant mechanisms behind capacity loss. One study found a battery lost 45% of its capacity by cycle at a 2.1 C charge rate, with the majority of that damage from lithium plating. BYD says its new chemistry is pretty much engineered to reduce this, but that's an unverified manufacturer claim on brand new tech, not independently tested data yet. The physics doesn't go away just because the marketing says otherwise. Wall number 2, almost no car actually charges at its rated peak. Real-world testing makes this painfully obvious. In one UK test at a 350 kilowatt ultra-rapid site, a Tesla Model Y rated for 250 kilowatts only managed 145 kilowatts. A Peugeot rated for 160 kilowatts struggled to pull 13. Every EV's charge rate tapers hard past 50 to 70% state of charge, and the car's own onboard limits, not the charger, usually decide the real number. Even BYD's 1500 kilowatt rate is reserved for select new flagship models on its 1000 volt platform, not the massive cars already on Chinese roads. And here's wall number 3. The grid has to cooperate too. A single DC fast charger already draws the equivalent peak demand of 30 to 60 homes. Cluster a few together, and you're past what most local grid infrastructure was built for, which is exactly why BYD is engineering its own megawatt chargers with grid mitigation measures built in, and why China's own national fast charger plan lists grid strain as an open problem it's still solving for, not a solved one. Here's the detail that actually undercuts the threat framing the most. BYD's answer to the grid problem is to buffer power in an on-site battery. Charge that buffer slowly, then discharge it to the car fast. That's the exact same store slow, dispense fast logic that makes battery swap work. The technology positioned as swap's killer is quietly borrowing swap's own playbook. None of this means charging speed stands still forever. BYD and CATL are both pouring capital into solving all 3 of these problems, but eventually competitive and at NIO's throat are different claims. Now, where does CATL actually fit into this? Now let's see what CATL is actually doing and what it isn't yet. Here's the correction. CATL didn't roll out a competing swap network to steal NIO's customers, but it also hasn't merged networks with NIO. And getting this distinction right actually matters because it changes what the partnership actually means for the stock. What's real? CATL has put real escalating capital behind NIO specifically. So let's go back to a 2023 framework agreement, then a March 2024 deal on long life batteries, then a March 2025 commitment to invest up to about $370 million into NIO Power. And now the January 2026 5-year strategic cooperation agreement. This is a battery supplier deepening its financial and technical stake in NIO's energy business over multiple years, not a one-off press release. Now, what's not real yet? A single unified swap network. NIO runs its own liquid cooled swap stations, over 3,700 of them to be exact. CATL runs a completely separate network built around its own Choco swap standard, using air-cooled packs aimed at a broader multi-brand market. Both companies officially describe this as a dual network parallel model. Two systems running side by side, not one merged. And when CATL announced its most recent list of automakers actually plugged into that Choco swap sharing network, which was Shangan, Chery, GAC, I think something called Ceres, SAIC, Wuling, and BAIC, NIO wasn't on that list. And there's a little wrinkle that makes this even clearer. Firefly, NIO's budget sub-brand, was originally announced as the vehicle that would adopt CATL's Choco swap standard. NIO's own CEO, William Lee, walked that back in November 2025, saying Firefly would instead run on NIO's own next generation stations because CATL's air-cooled packs, built primarily for ride-hailing use, didn't match the safety and temperature performance NIO wanted. The one bridge that was supposed to connect these networks got quietly removed. Wonk, wonk, wonk. So when CATL called NIO an quote-unquote irreplaceable and important strategic partner this past April, it landed right after NIO's absence from that 6 automaker list drew attention, and it read less like an announcement and more like a reassurance. The genuine bull case is still there. It's just a future one. Both companies remain publicly committed to a national battery swap standard that would eventually let batteries move between networks. A NIO vehicle using a Choco swap station or vice versa. CATL has said as much repeatedly. That's a real, capital-backed direction of travel. It's just not built yet. And Firefly is a live example of how hard the actual engineering compatibility is turning out to be. So why is all this still a net positive for NIO? Here's a few reasons the swap moat is not dead yet, far from it. Swap does something ultra-fast charging structurally just cannot do. It isolates battery degradation from the owner. That's me and that's you. The faster the charge, the harder the battery gets worked. That's not a NIO talking point, it's basic electrochemistry. So pushing everyone toward ultra-fast charging just moves the wear onto the individual owner's batteries instead of a professionally managed swap fleet. Swap also lets NIO sell cars cheaper up front under battery as a service. And this avoids putting the fast, most expensive charging hardware in every single car. Swap stations are grid assets, not grid liabilities. And this cuts across both companies, not just NIO. CATL runs a cloud-based dispatching platform that connects its swap stations to the grid and local solar systems for peak shaving and frequency regulations at millisecond level response, effectively turning clusters of stations into city-level virtual power plants. It's even signed a deal with Xiaomen's transit authority to run bidirectional V2G through bus battery swaps. NIO's own stations in Denmark and the Netherlands already do the same job for frequency control. A depleted battery sitting in a swap station can charge whenever the grid has spare capacity and discharge back during peak demand. A car plugged into an ultra-fast charger wants maximum power immediately with zero flexibility, which is exactly the behavior that strains local grid in the first place. That's a structural advantage for swap that has absolutely nothing to do with which company's standard wins. The demand signal is still strong on NIO's own numbers. NIO passed 100 million cumulative battery swaps in February, and swap volume hit record highs over Chinese New Year, up 29% year over year, while NIO's customer base grew by more than 300,000 vehicles. CATL's capital and long life battery tech strengthen NIO's own network directly, regardless of whether the two swap ecosystems ever formally merge. And the stated direction of travel is toward a national standard that would eventually let batteries move between networks. Even as a future dated bet, that's a tailwind. It means NIO isn't the only one lobbying for swap to become standard practice across the industry. Duh. So what's the bottom line for investors? None of this is the stock is undervalued, buy now. That's not my call to make. That's for you to decide. But if you're trying to figure out what's actually driving NIO right now, it's three separate threads converging. It's an analyst re-rating. That's the Goldman Sachs $7 price target. It's a chip stake windfall from CXMT that nobody's really covering, and a swap network story that's more industry consolidating around NIO standard than NIO's model under siege from BYD. BYD's charging push is worth tracking over the next few years, but not reacting to today. So here's the debate. Battery chemistry, real-world charging limits, and grid capacity all currently favor swap over ultra-fast charging, period. But all three are moving targets. So let me ask you this. Do you think charging tech closes the gap in 5 years, 15 years, or never? I'm saying they're both needed, so I'm saying never. It's not really ever going to close that gap, okay? It's not healthy for the battery. But I want you to drop your take below. I'll pin the best argument on both sides, okay? So 5 years, 15 years, or never. Is ultra-fast charging going to close that gap with battery swap? Until then, peace out!